Hello, my name is Stephen Mallon. Thank you so much for being here. Yeah, I am an RIT grad. I was in school in 92 to 96. I got to Brooklyn in 96. Was assisting for about 4 years. I worked for everyone and anyone that I could come across because I wanted to get an understanding about the business and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I started off wanting to be a fashion photographer. I thought that that was the area I was going to be able to be creative and realized that I was actually not in fashion. And so that kind of moved on into travel and landscape. But one of the things I was really constantly attracted to was industrial landscape. So as we're going from town to town and traveling and everything, I'm going into locations that I can get into just kind of on my own, finding these different moments. And I get picked up by Image Bank, which then became Getty, and so they're starting to license my photographs for me. And so I'm just traveling, finding these human elements that I'm able then to license through my relationship with Image Bank, which is now Getty. So finding these photographs, this was a turbine being installed in a farm in Austria. As we're doing this, I'm constantly getting attracted to textural maps and recycling, because I kept on ending up in paper mills, the scrap yards. This was out on Fire Island, I believe, probably 2004. This is 4x5, shooting straight down onto the bales of compressed aluminum. And as I'm doing this work, I'm working on getting exhibitions. I always liked my prints big. Wanted them up on the wall and everything. So we're doing micro shows. My first show in New York was in like 97, 98 at my friend's like basement apartment in Soho underneath like the, what was it, Thai restaurant? Kelly and Ping. We were like basically the basement of Kelly and Ping. And that was like their first pop-up show that we did. So I ended up at a portfolio review that PDN was co-hosting. They had run like a very similar two-day event and everything. And so I met a book agent there, and she was like, "This is great work." And I was like, "That's awesome. I would love to make a book." But I didn't feel like I had a cohesive body of work yet because I was just kind of like running around finding these different locations and didn't really feel that, yeah, Stephen Mallon's coffee table book was there yet. And so we started brainstorming with my now wife, and we realized that because of the past work and everything, one thing that I was ending up at was at these recycling locations. And the US kind of image and industry and everything was like not in great shape just based on like the political environment we were in. And so I decided that I wanted to focus on the recycling industry. So I hired a writer, got a proposal together, and started sending this out to different companies, just saying, "Hey, I'm working on this project about the recycling industry in America. I'd love to get in and photograph the process and the materials that you have. It's not a commercial project. It's all self-funded." And so I was able to get different people to say yes. This was an electronics recycling company in Minnesota. This was a reclaimed tire place, and they're blasting mats. So they take these old truck tires, stitch them together, and then they would put them over areas that they're gonna dynamite or drive heavy equipment over. And again, I just love the texture of these things. So this was a paper mill that let me in Minnesota. It was running like 97% post-consumer waste. And yeah, I just love the Russian industrial footprint of these machines. These are bales of reclaimed saran wrap. If you ever see the pallets at like Target or Kmart or here and everything that's wrapped in that plastic. So that plastic itself is very recyclable. And apparently like each bale was worth about $6,000. And that was the price quote that they gave to me when I shot this 10 years ago. So imagine how much these bales are now. So all that saran wrap, they keep it, it's money. So as I'm doing this, I am still looking for commissioned work. I'm still hoping also for an assignment career at the same time. I'm looking for portrait assignments, I'm looking for magazines, I'm looking for, potential advertising work. And I was showing this landscape work along with this body of lifestyle portraiture work that I've been shooting. And one of the conversations I had with an art buyer is she was looking at this and saying, these are great, but until you actually have a photograph of a guy with a wrench in hand at these industrial locations, I am never gonna be able to bring this back to one of our clients. And I was really resistant to the idea at first because I really felt that the landscape work was what was going up on the wall and the people was what was going to get me paid. But I realized that like if this art buyer at this major advertising agency is telling me that this is something that they need to do, like this is the Venn diagram, this is the moment where I actually need to like change a little bit of my focus and my thinking to give something that they are asking for. So in that process, decided to go hire some actors and set up industrial shoots to make it look like we were actually working. And used Craigslist, because this is like Facebook casting, and found this. But one of the great things about it is while I was out scouting for these locations to shoot these workers, I found this. So the MTA had a artificial reef program where they sank over 2,000 subway cars in the Atlantic over the span of 10 plus years. And I had just read about the story about the last redbird going into the Atlantic, and I was just like, oh, this would have been perfect. And so when I found this barge sitting there, I was like, excuse me, what is that? I was like, oh, that's the MTA's artificial reef project. So I was like, really? I was like, yeah. It's like, when do you do it? I was, oh, we go out every single month. I'm like, really? I've got a recycling project. And he's like, oh, that's nice. I'm a security guard. And it's like, okay, that's fine. Who do I talk to? And he fortunately got me in touch with the general manager that was running the program, and I explained the recycling book, and he was like, that sounds great. Let me get you in touch with the MTA, who's the client. And fortunately, the gentleman who was running the program, this guy named Mike Zacchia, was totally open for me to come in and photograph the project. And I'll get to those images in a second. But so as this is going on, I'm developing my relationship with Weeks Marine. And so they called me because there was a ferry that had sunk off of the coast of Weehawken at the pier. And because it's sunk on site there, I don't remember exactly what happened, but they had to go in and actually break up the ferry on site. So they went in with this giant crane, dropped this guillotine blade into the water, and beat the crap out of the boat in the water. And then once there was enough debris, they would go in with the bucket and pick up the debris to get it out of the water, because they had to get it out of there somewhere. So this was kind of just like building up the trust and building up the relationship weeks. And then one night, my contact there, Jason, says, hey, I don't know if you're interested, but tomorrow we're picking up this. So the Intrepid had been pulled out of its parking space on the West Side Highway for a number of years while it was getting retrofitted. And the Concorde was sitting out on an airstrip at a closed airport off of Flatbush. And I'm dropping their name right now. If anyone knows it. Floyd Benefield, thank you. That was it. So they went out and picked it up from there, brought it out back to their yard in New Jersey, and then they remembered, oh, maybe we should bring a photographer for this. And so I was able to go with them and ride back out to the Intrepid with the Concorde. So I have ridden with the Concorde. I never rode on the Concorde, but I rode very, very close to it. So January 15th, 2009. It is my wife's birthday. We're sitting in a bar, and some crazy geese had a problem with an aircraft and decided to say, hey, we don't really feel like you should take off. Sully crash lands in the Hudson River. Everybody survives. We're watching this. The news is coming back that everyone has survived the emergency landing, the ditching in the Hudson River. And I still think it was a voice in my head. My wife was saying, no, it was my voice. But one of those voices said, I wonder how they're going to get the aircraft out of the water. And I realized, I know a guy. Weeks Marine has the largest rotating crane on the eastern seaboard. It was the same crane that they had just used on putting the Concorde back a couple of months before. So I called my contact there, and he was like, hey, we don't know if we have the project yet, but I'm going to be in a meeting with the Coast Guard and the FBI tomorrow morning, and I'm not going to be able to pick up my phone. Call Tom Weeks. He always answers his phone, and just remind him who you are. And so at like 10:13 in the morning, because he said he was going to know at like 10:10 if they had the job. And I called him 3 minutes after that. And I was like, hey, Steve, the photographer, we met on the Concorde job. I was like, oh, yeah, what's going on? He was like, oh, I was wondering if you got that job. I was like, what project? And I was like, the plane in the Hudson River. I was like, oh, yeah, do you want to work? So I fortunately had all of my equipment ready and prepped and everything. I was in Union Square at my office and got down there, got my brand new GPS out, pushed in the address and everything. I was getting over it, got into New Jersey, and man, I got lost. Note to self, double check that the address of companies, if they have 2 offices, make sure you put the address of the office that you're going to, not their corporate office in a different part of New Jersey. I don't know if you know the 14 ABCDEFGX97 truck thing, but it is a really, really fun thing to get lost in when you're under pressure. So they're calling me saying, we have a crane and a tugboat waiting for you, where are you? And I was like, I think I'm close, and yeah. Anyways, made it out there. This was one of the photographs that I made when we were arriving. It's titled Whale. I've always loved this image. I just feel that, you know, the ladder is there, like there's the blowhole, you've got this damaged animal, and it's like, no, no, it's okay, you're gonna fly again. A bunch of ice came down into the Hudson River right after this. It was fortunate that it wasn't there. The plane probably would have skidded across the ice if it was in the Hudson when it hit. Who knows? But this was one of the photographs of the divers going in. They're checking for structural integrity, and then they went in and put these slings underneath the aircraft to pick it up and get it out of the water. This is the image of the wing. It's a very complex title. It's called Wing. The Coast Guard tied it off to the pier. The rope broke. The aircraft then sank afterwards. So I just slowly photographed the aircraft as it went out. But I've always loved this image, the color, the coldness of it. It was like one of the coldest weekends in New York in 30 years. I think that we've since broken that record 5 times, but there she is coming out of the water. There's the water. Title, she's looking at you. So they get it up onto a barge, they're in New Jersey, they're working on it, and I see that people are going in and out of the aircraft. And I'm chatting with the NTSB guy that's there and everything. He's like, would it be okay for me to go in and photograph? And he said, yeah, sure, and everything. And I almost double checked him, because I was like, are you sure? But I went in, and I was able to get into the cockpit, and I was the first photographer to actually photograph inside of the aircraft before anything got released. Due to some of those bridges in New Jersey, the clearance was a little bit too low, and they mismeasured it at one point. So the trip out of the yard in Bayonne to this other location went from a 45-minute to an 8-hour drive, where we had to go up to Teterboro to get to a bridge that the aircraft was going to be able to fit under due to the height of the trails and everything. But part of that journey took us through Jersey City. And so this photograph passing the gas station was titled 30,000 Gallons. And there was a moment where I was shooting, and I fortunately got one of the state troopers just to drive my truck, and I would just shoot out of my skylight, the sunroof. And there was a moment what's going on? I was like, oh, there's an aircraft coming down the river. And she's like, oh, what are you talking about? And she would look down, she's like, oh my God. Oh, I remember that. So I've picked up a gallery representation through this project at a new gallery. I'd already been signed with another gallery, but I ended up getting picked up by another one, which I'll be talking about in my next second stage talk at 3 o'clock a little bit. But they took the work down to Miami to the art fairs. They were in one of the satellite fairs from Basel, and they sold half a dozen prints of mine. And half of them were from the photographs of the Artificial Reef Project. And so they asked me, can you go back and flesh this out a little bit more? Because I only had 4 images at that point. And they're like, if you can turn this into an actual full show, and not just have a couple of these one-offs of the recycling project, we think this might be another solo show for you. So went back into the yard, kept photographing, and fleshed out this project. So these are the New York City subway cars. I don't know if you guys remember the cars that had the plexiglass front, and so they ripped that off because that stuff wouldn't actually break down in the water. So they take out the motors, the Freon, as much of the cabling as they can, and they chopped off the plastic in the front. This is titled Settling. It's also we've got a nickname of a ghost train, because we just kind of see the spray in the back. It's the train's kind of chugging along in the water. It's I think I can, I think I can. This is the day that everybody on the tugboat lost their breakfast. And I'm talking about people who have been at sea for 20-something years. It was rough. They almost called off the lip, but it finally calmed down. But it was a good time. This is Pool. This is our political system. So that reef, fortunately, also got a lot of attention, and then led me to another reef project There was the MTA contact said that they were going to be sinking a destroyer at the same reef in a couple of weeks. He got me in touch with the salvage company that was doing the work. They wanted the MTA as a contractor, so they thought that if they bring me in as a photographer, it'll be kind of like an evil trade. Like, they'll get a client out of me getting access. And I'm like, sure, that'll happen. So anyways, they got me in and everything. So I was able to go out on this ship just before they sank it. And so part of the process is that with the Coast Guard is that you have to have it seaworthy until it gets out onto location. So they actually had welders on the ship once they got into that spot, and then the welders started cutting out more holes on the side of the ship for wreck diving. And so part of the challenge about this photograph was timing the ship bouncing back and forth in the ocean with the sparks and getting that little bit of light on the goggles. And, you know, it's toxic. There was a couple of moments where I really had to stop shooting and get out of the room because it was nastier. But it's also fun. So I'm still obsessed by my textural maps. This was in the pilot house where they've removed all of the controls. I have no idea what those markings are. If anyone's in the Navy can ever translate them, please email me because they mean something to somebody. This was the dry dock in Philadelphia. This was kind of a pickup because the destroyer was actually just next door to this, but I had loved the location. I loved the look of this so much. And I asked the people that owned the dock if it was okay to photograph it as well. And they're like, yeah, sure, don't care. And I've just always wondered whose office that is where the ladder is at the bottom. And there she goes. So as this is going on, I'm seeing in my commercial life, people are starting to ask about video. And I was really resistant to the idea of shooting video. I just didn't like the idea of it. But the 5D Mark II was really kind of starting to push that was going to be a potential thing for me to be able to deliver to clients. Because similar to how when digital came around, like if they asked you, do you shoot digital? Because we were all shooting film at the beginning of my career. If you said no, they were like, oh, that's okay. And now I think if you're on an assignment, if you try to like shoot a job with film without talking to people in advance, you know, they'll be just looking at the back of your camera, like, well, where's the preview? Where's my JPEG? So Weeks, fortunately, contacted me again, and in a couple of weeks, they're like, we're gonna be bringing down a barge. And I was like, I think this is a perfect time for me to test out my time-lapse capabilities. So I contacted Weeks, and this is part of another project where they were doing a chimney. And I shot this film as well, but it wasn't great. I didn't really like the ending of it, because I got out to the power plant, we got the chimney delivered, but I didn't go back and shoot the actual assembly of it. So this time, this one actually worked. I hope the audio is up and running. Can you kick up audio? Oh, David. That's someone else's audio. You've got no audio from it? There it is. It was 7 cameras at tops. I was on the barge when I was going past, and then I had camera crews. I had my other interns and assistants staged at different locations to catch it while we were passing. So it's 30,000 frames cut down to the 3 or 4 minutes. So, David? There it goes. No, you go away. So, just a little side note about the film. That got picked up by half a dozen film festivals and a bunch of press. Like the Wall Street Journal picked it up, and a number of other people highlighted on photo blogs and stuff. And the phone rang at one point, and I was like, "Hi, it's Robin. I'm the director of communications for the New York City DOT, and I just saw your Willis Avenue Bridge, Wall Street Journal or somewhere, and everything." It's like, just 2 things. That's my bridge. And why does your film look better than the one that I paid for? So, Robin is now one of my longest term clients. So, along this way, fortunately, the work is starting to get some attention, and both the filmmaking and photography. And so I got a call from the New York Times, and it was one of the editors at the magazine, and it was like, "Hi, we just saw your film. I don't know if you've heard of her, Kathy Ryan." And I was like, "Yeah, I know who she is. She wants to meet." And so she brought me in for a meeting, we started talking, and I started producing a couple of projects for them. We shot a couple of films. It went all right. There was a couple of glitches here and there, working stuff out. And after the second film, my editor said to me very kindly, "We owe you one." And I was like, "Really?" And it was because the one thing that I wanted was to be in the actual book. I wanted to be in the magazine, not just the web. Because even though the web has got reach, and I like being a filmmaker, I am still a photographer at heart. And so I wanted to find a project that was actually going to run in print. And one of the catches with the New York Times and some of these publications and everything is that there's got to be a hook. You know, it's got to be the first, the oldest, the newest, the last, the only. There's got to be, there's got to be a the. It can't be an And so I started searching around for like, what else do I want to possibly do? And it's like, biggest. And so we started looking at the container ships. We didn't find a container ship that was going to work, because there was a TV show going on one of the big container ships anyways. But we found the next biggest ship, which was the Prelude. And technically it's not a ship because it doesn't have the ability to drive itself, but it is the largest floating structure ever built to date. It is 1,600 feet in length. So if you imagine the World Trade Center as a vessel sitting on its stern, that is the size of this thing. So through about 6 months of emails and discussions with Shell and the shipyard, I was able to get out there and photograph the construction of this. So the title of this piece is "Some Assembly Required." I always just think this is just either a very, very crazy Lego or IKEA furniture design. It's the inside of one of the cooling towers. It's the outside of the hall. So just, if you can see the people, it gives you a little bit of a sense of the scale. So this is a 6,000-ton capability crane. As I was telling you about the crane on the eastern seaboard that Weeks has a 250-ton lift capability. This is 6,000 tons. The structure that they have there is about a 12-story building that they picked up. And when they were designing the Prelude, they realized that they didn't have a big enough crane to pick these things up, so they built a bigger crane. Like, these are the people I like working with. Let's just build a bigger crane. So there's the photograph of Prelude. And I still have a love-hate relationship with this, because when I shot this, I zoomed in and was checking to make sure that it was in focus and everything, and I was absolutely in love with the picture. The thing that I've always regretted, and this is, I think it was Vincent Lefort at one point in one of his lectures talked about the monkey moment, where you're sitting there pounding yourself on the chest because you finally made this great picture, but you're actually missing the one that you need to be doing. What I didn't realize until I got back into the edit is that I never actually shot the zoom in version. I was so happy about how the frame looked when I zoomed in. I didn't think about the fact that I actually didn't go in and shoot on the 7200 and just capture what was happening with the module being brought into the backside of the Prelude, because I think that that's really where the picture is. So that's a confession. So with these projects and everything and some relationships I was able to build, I was able to go down to National Geographic and present this work. Similar presentation like this, but much smaller room. And it was a bunch of different photo editors that were in the room. And fortunately, one of them remembered that one of the writers had traveled on the SS United States when they were a child. And so the SS United States is dry docked in Pennsylvania, in Philly, and they're fighting to keep it out of the scrapyards. And so we contacted the foundation that has it and was like, hey, I've got a writer who's at National Geographic. Can we possibly come in and photograph the ship, the vessel? And they're like, absolutely. So I was able to get in and shoot the SS United States for National Geographic. It holds the speed record for crossing the Atlantic. It was partially funded through the US government as a undercover troop carrier in case we were gonna go back into a ground war, pre-aircraft travel. And yeah. And then I'm gonna get to my last project. So I was really fortunate with a number of these assignments and projects getting me on the other side of the fence to shoot. But I found that that was starting to become a bottleneck because if I didn't have that hook, if I didn't have that story that was gonna get me into photograph these locations, I wasn't gonna be able to work on a project. And so what I ended up needing and wanting to do is finding something where I didn't need to be asking anyone for permission or forgiveness. I was kind of past the hopefully they won't catch me stage in my career and wanted to find something that I could shoot without any restrictions. And so I kind of got back to one of my early passions, which was the rail industry. We had just moved out of New York and everything, and we moved to Beacon, New York. And in Newburgh, there's an active freight line along the Hudson River. And there was a parking lot sitting right on the river there. And I was like, oh, I can actually go and shoot these trains without anyone giving me any problem. So I've been now traveling for about 4 years looking for different locations. This is Bear Mountain, this is still New York. So these are all active freight trains. So they are passing up to 20, 25 miles an hour. And I just shoot with a high-speed shutter on my tripod and freeze the cars. And I kind of refer to it as, it's like a fishing trip, except that you're standing on a bridge trying to catch the fish that's in a blue barrel on the back of a flatbed truck that is passing you at 20 miles an hour. This is one of the ones from Newburgh. This is one of the early, this is a car carrier, but I've just always loved the geometry and aspects of it. I believe these are gas main pipes. This is another center beam car. I shot this in Minnesota when I was seeing my parents. And one of the things that I found out about this afterwards, I was meeting with a collector, and he was pointing out that these apartment buildings in the back are modular buildings. So the walls and everything are now arriving on train cars and then being picked up by crane and then assembled on the site. And so that building that was directly behind it was potentially delivered by the same car that was there. This is my water tower homage. Love the Germans. This is at a residency in Nevada. I've also stayed pretty pure about these photographs. They are cropped. This is one of the rules of photography that I'm breaking, is I am cropping my frame. So, it's down, I shoot this on, an SLR or medium format frame, and then cut it down to a 3:1 ratio to really, focus on the texture and the design of the cars. But I am not retouching out like power lines. Like if I can't get rid of them in the cropping, they stay. I thought this was pretty funny graffiti. Boxcar in Baltimore. This is an old caboose that a mine outside of Salt Lake, still operational. And that is the end of my slideshow. Just a minute or 90 seconds over. We don't see David, so I can answer some questions if you got any. You scratching your head, or you got a question? Scratching? All right. All right, I will be speaking again at 3 o'clock about working with galleries and some other potential outlets on getting your work shown out. So thank you very much for listening. I got no questions.
You guys have no questions? That's amazing work, right? I've been waiting to show this for a long time. Awesome. Thank you so much.